Hello everybody, welcome back to the show. Today my guest is Corinne Jordan. Corrine is a queen breeder from Brisbane, Australia, and her business is called the Bee Lady Apiaries. She's very well known for breeding Italian bees, but today she's going to be speaking to me about a new program she's got called beegenetics.com.au. Now this program is all about breeding for Varroa resistance, which, as you might know, this has been a big problem for us here in Australia in the last year. If you didn't know, basically what happened is that it came into Australia about a year ago. We've been trying really hard to eradicate it, trying to contain it, but it is persisting. So if it does break out, programs like Corinne's, the one we're talking about today, are going to be really important for dealing with Varroa moving forward. But before we get into that, I want to let you know, if you're enjoying this podcast, you can also get it on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and a bunch of other places. And if you would like to hear someone on the show or get in touch with me, you can do that by going to nixonbees.com.au. Okay, let's get on with the episode. Corinne Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Brent, for inviting me. I'm really excited to be talking to your listeners today.
Oh, absolutely. And thanks so much for coming on the show. Could you start us off with a funny story about beekeeping?
Well, I've probably got quite a few funny stories about beekeeping, although at the time they probably weren't that funny. So when we first started out, probably would have been in my first year when I didn't have any utes with loaders to shift bees. And I got my husband to help move some bees one night. And I was fairly new to the game and he had no experience with bees whatsoever. We had to carry them about 200 metres into a water treatment plant. And after we got them all settled in safely and opened the doors, he waved the torch right in front of the entrance when he was opening the door, and they all came piling out because they weren't very impressed with the move and chased him. And he went running off in the wrong direction and ended up in the wastewater.
Oh, no.
At the water treatment plant.
Yeah.
And covered in all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think after that, I couldn't get him to shift bees again for about 2 or 3 years with me.
That's awful.
There was that incident early on in our career, and then another time I'd come back from beekeeping out at various apiary sites, and when I come back in, I generally just park the ute, leave the doors open, run inside the buildings, do something, and then come back and unload. And when I came back, there was a goat inside my ute sitting on the driver's seat eating the burr comb out of the burr comb container that I had in there.
Oh, no.
And the next door neighbour's goat had escaped.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a couple of stories for you. There's plenty more, but I probably could spend all day telling you stories about beekeeping. Most people can who've been in it for a while.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Now, you've got this great new program that you've started. It's called beegenetics.com.au. And before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about what's happened in Australia over the last couple of years in terms of Varroa?
Yes. So in terms of Varroa or before Varroa, because...
Yeah, that's right, because we've been sort of anticipating it for a while and bringing in a few things here and there, haven't we?
Yeah. So I've actually been looking into breeding for Varroa resistance for as long as I've been a queen bee breeder, which would probably be about 10 years. The big issue around that, though, is how do you go about it when you don't actually have Varroa? So we've always looked at doing hygienic behaviour testing instead of counting mites because we don't have mites. So I've done a lot of liquid nitrogen, freeze-killed brood testing over the years, and pin-killed brood testing, which is just testing for general hygienic behaviour in bees. And it's also, it helps with other diseases like chalk brood and American foul brood and EFB, because the faster that bees remove infected brood from brood cells, the less likely those sorts of diseases are going to spread. Yeah.
Right. And we've brought in, so Australian Queen Breeding Association has worked to bring in a few bees over the years. And do you want to tell us a little bit about how those efforts have gone?
Yes, so that's also something that I think there was a lot of queen bee breeders who've been working on that privately and not having much success. And then a consortium of beekeepers got together and with AQBBA's support to try and import semen instead. So initially you could only import live queen bees into Australia until about 2016, and then there was a protocol written to bring in semen, which we thought would be a lot easier process than putting queen bees in a quarantine facility, which was in Sydney and is now in Melbourne, where they go through quite a process. I'm not familiar with all the stages. I am familiar, but I can't remember them all precisely. But they initially involve taking all the attendants out that come in with the queen. Then she gets reattended and treated for potential Varroa mites and checked. They all get checked for all the diseases, all of her original attendants. She gets held for about 2 weeks before she's released to a nuke. So it's quite a long process. And there's a lot that can go wrong in that time frame. So we all thought that bringing semen into the country might be an easier method of getting new genetic material or potentially VSH material into the country. The only problem is that we are finding it really difficult to clear deformed wing virus. So every country in the world that has Varroa has these viruses with it, and deformed wing virus is one that is on our importation protocol that we have to test for. And we have been unsuccessful in clearing any bees anywhere so far of deformed wing virus. So we're still working on that. I think we're up to, this will be the 3rd year that we've been with the same very cooperative queen breeder, VSH queen bee breeder in New Zealand, Rea Butler, who has also been on AQBBA and given a webinar on her work.
Yeah, Rea's great. She's great.
Yeah, she's done a lot of work on Varroa resistance in New Zealand, and we're really excited to be dealing with her and hopefully be getting some material off her. It would be even nicer if we could also transfer some stock back to New Zealand somehow, but they have very strict importation requirements too.
Yeah, and they won't even allow honey to come in, which is really interesting.
Yeah. So
I had Rea on the show last year, and she told me about VSH and also how New Zealand found that trait within their own population.
Yeah.
Really interesting stuff.
I had noticed that you had Rea on too.
Yeah, she's great. Now, do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened in Australia last year in terms of Varroa?
So I've followed it to some extent, but don't have all the details. And that would be that it arrived in Newcastle about the 22nd of June, I think, from memory, somewhere around there. We were at the QBA conference in Warwick when they announced it to us, and that was around about the 22nd of 26th of June from memory, somewhere around there. And since then, it's been under eradication by the DPI. So DPI have been trying to eradicate and euthanise all the bees in and around that Newcastle area. But they are now up to, I think it's 160 IPs. So
yeah, it's slowly growing, isn't it?
It's slowly growing. They're still saying that it was one original mite family, and they're still finding that all their IPs are related. They still think they have a chance of getting on top of it, but I think that the amount of time it's been in the country now, that's another year. So are we looking at 2 years? I think the longer there is active mites on the mainland, the less our chances are of eradicating it. I still hope that they can achieve that, because we'll be facing enormous costs if we are faced with. Yeah,
let's hope they can continue working and doing what they're doing, because they're doing a great job so far. It's been a tremendous effort. But if it does happen to take hold, why would breeding for Varroa be better than using treatments, do you think?
Well, breeding for Varroa is definitely going to be more sustainable and less expensive, because treatments, if we're going off what the Ministry of Primary Industries in New Zealand telling us, it's costing them between $14 to $19 a hive to treat. So if you've got 1,000 hives, you're looking at an extra at least $14,000 a year to treat ongoing. And then that's not even taking into consideration the impact that Varroa is going to have on us while we figure out what treatment plans work. We're definitely going to be losing bees in that process too, and that's going to have a flow-on effect to pollination industries and all sorts of other industries that we can't probably even imagine that rely on bees. So having bees that are able to maintain themselves and look after their own health is definitely a better way to go. So, yeah, breeding for resistance makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about how that program works?
So it's going to start with looking at the UBeeO sprays that have been developed by Kira Wagner in the USA. She's come up with a spray that mimics the odours that are given off from brood that's infested with Varroa mite. So in the absence of a Varroa mite infestation, you can still use the spray to see if the bees will respond to it the same way. So I'll be testing probably 400 to 500 hives around Australia with beekeepers who are collaborating on this project to see what the response is, and then selecting those bees that respond well to form a base population for a Varroa-resistant breeding program.
Right, yeah.
Basically.
Sounds great. So you'll be, and we discussed this earlier, you'll be actually testing hives that don't have mites in it. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging than what they had to do in New Zealand. So they were able to find the VSH trait within their own population, and you're trying to do that as well here in Australia. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Without mites.
Yes. So
but in the entire world, every country in the world, they have always had a base population that are naturally resistant. So there's a very small percentage that we know are naturally resistant. It's somewhere in our population there will be. It's just a matter of finding them. This tool will allow us to find them.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
I'm looking at probably 2 to 4%.
Right. And have you already started using UBeeO?
Yes, I have had access to it for about 7 or 8 months now. I wrote to Kira Wagner probably early last winter and said, hey, I'm really excited about your research. I'm interested in getting involved in field trials if you've got anything going. And after a lot of emails, that happened. And so I trialed the product here through our previous season and just made sure that I'm happy that it does what it says it does and that I can work with it.
Great.
So yeah.
So what is it like to work with?
It's pretty effective because it's quick and efficient. I talked briefly before about hygiene testing. The pinprick test is quite an efficient test, but the liquid nitrogen freeze-kill brood test is very labour intensive, and then also you've got to wait for the liquid nitrogen to thaw enough so that you can put the comb back and get your plastic tube off the brood that you've used to contain that area of brood that you've frozen. That takes about 15 to 20 minutes sometimes to thaw out. And then you come back 24 hours later. So it's kind of a 2-day process. And when you've done a few of these over a few years, you just get to the conclusion that you just don't want to be lugging around a big, heavy liquid nitrogen container and going through all this labour-intensive process just to find out which bees are hygienic. So Kira Wagner's test is a 2-hour test. You spray it, you put it straight back, and then you come back in 2 hours and have a look, and the job's done. So it's quite cost effective and efficient compared to other hygienic tests.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. So the program is called beegenetics.com.au. Can you tell us how people can get involved?
So at the moment, I've got some collaborations I'm looking for. If they're a pay for spray type collaboration, where I'm still got a few of those available, where I will be going around testing people's colonies. I need some volunteers probably to help test colonies in various places. I'll be putting up information on my website for specific things, which is www.beegenetics.com.au. So if you keep checking in on the website and Facebook, I will let people know when there's opportunities for beekeepers to get involved in the breeding program. At the moment, we are looking to finance the first year of work to get that, find that base population and get the program launched. So really, my main thing at the moment is looking for about $200,000 to cover the costs of all of that first year of work and get the project off the ground. And there is links through the website, which I've mentioned just a minute ago, that also link into where you can donate to the project if you feel like it's worth supporting.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a really important work that you're doing, and I think that people would be more than happy to get involved. And thanks so much for telling us about that. Is there anything else you'd like to chat about today, Corinne?
Probably I had a whole lot of things to say. I've been breeding bees for about 10 years now. So I've got a base population that's already selected for commercially desirable traits. Adding BSH is achievable. And this is a fairly unique opportunity because while I have this population of bees to do this with, I can't make this offer indefinitely because the cost involved of maintaining the breeding population, they will keep mounting while I'm not earning an income doing something else. So I really do need it to be funded to be able to do the project properly and focus on it solely for the next couple of years.
So if people want to get involved, they can find out what's happening at beegenetics.com.au. Also from your Facebook page, is there Bee Lady Apiaries? Is that right?
It's all going to be fed through www.beegenetics.com.au.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, one more thing I wanted to talk about is people who are in Australia, you would know Corinne for her Cordovan Queen Bees. And actually, before I did this interview, I told a few friends that I was going to be interviewing you, and a few of them said, you've got to talk to her about the Cordovan Queen Bees. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. You're famous for them. Do you want to tell us, for those people who don't know what a Cordovan Queen Bee is, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Now you've put me on the spot.
Sorry, I
That's all right.
I did mention beforehand that I was going to be asking you about this, but I just realised that a friend of mine was like, don't forget to ask her about the Cordovans.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the Cordovans, I think there's some confusion. Hopefully we've resolved that over the years, that they're a different species. They're not. They're just a colour that's thrown by the Italian bees, or Apis mellifera linguistica, I think is the subspecies, but with a Cordovan colouring. And Cordovan colouring is like the blue eye colours in people. It's a recessive gene, so it's governed by a recessive gene. So you need both the queen and the drone she's mated with to have the Cordovan colouring in order to get a Cordovan queen bee. Yeah. So they have to be bred basically by someone who's focusing on that task. I do my breeding by instrumental insemination, so I'm able to select on the basis of colour. And I have always they're a very pretty bee, very attractive, very docile, very broody.
Yeah, they're really beautiful. I remember the first time I saw them, a real estate agent friend of mine who I've done some bee removals from different properties, he called me up and he said, we've got this beehive on this property we're trying to sell. No one knows anything about it. And I turned up and I could see, even from a distance, I could see these little yellow flakes going in and out of the hive. And I thought, oh, geez, that looks funny. And I got over there and I saw straight away it was the Cordovan bee, which I'd only ever read about, and really, really beautiful, but striking. You can see it from a long way away. This beautiful gold colour they've got. And if people want to get one of those here in Australia, they can get in touch with you and pick one up for the next season. Is that right?
Probably not.
Oh, no?
Because I'm not really producing queens anymore.
Oh, really?
I don't have. I used to be small scale queen producer. I had around about 300 mating nukes. These days I have less than 50.
Right.
So I can't even produce queens now. I breed queens. I'm a queen bee breeder, so I supply the producers.
Right.
So you would need to find the producers that I supply with breeding stock that has the Cordovan colouring and buy them off them now.
Right. Yeah. So if you are in the market for picking up a breeder queen, can people still get in touch with you to get a breeder queen?
If my project goes ahead, that won't be happening either. I shouldn't laugh about that. But yeah, well, let's put it this way. You're either going to be able to get a breeder queen or you'll be getting Varroa resistant bees, one or the other, not both.
Right, okay. Well,
because I can't commit to both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends what happens with the funding. At this stage, my cutoff is the 30th of June. Before I know which way I'm going, I'm going to make a decision on the end of the financial year what my future looks like, one way or the other.
Excellent. All right. So we've got until the 30th of June, a couple more weeks to convince Corinne to continue with this work. And so once again, the website is beegenetics.com.au. Corinne, thanks so much for being on the show today. And it was great.
You're welcome, Brent.
And thanks very much on behalf of everyone in Australia for the work you're doing.
Thank you. I enjoy what I'm doing and quite happy to keep doing it as long as it's paid for.
Because basically,
Yep.
I can't keep working for nothing.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So definitely, as an industry, we've got to get behind you, and I think I think people will be really happy to do that. So thanks again.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, well, how about that? A Varroa breeding program right here in Australia. Great work, Corinne. If you would like to get involved with that program, back that program, fund it, or just want to know what's going on, you can by going to beegenetics.com.au. Once again, thanks for Corinne for coming on the show today. Really, really appreciate that, and I wish you all the best. If you would like to get in touch with me, you can at nixonbees.com.au. And until next time, thanks so much for tuning in.